Have you ever given your whole life to someone only to watch them push you aside like a piece of old furniture? What happens when a mother's sacrifice is repaid with betrayal? Stay with me. This is a story of quiet endurance turning into unstoppable revenge. Make sure you follow and subscribe for more stories that will leave your heart pounding and your jaw on the floor. Eleanor Grant was 72 when her world cracked open. She had just returned from the supermarket, juggling 2 heavy grocery bags, when she saw her son Daniel standing in the living room. The autumn sunlight poured through the window, catching the sharpness in his eyes. His arms were crossed, his posture tense, as if he'd been rehearsing this moment. "Mom, I'm tired of seeing you every day," he said. Just like that. No hesitation. No warmth. Eleanor froze. The plastic bag handles dug into her palms. "What did you just say?" Daniel didn't flinch. "I want space. Lily feels the same way. You should find another place so we can live our lives." His words hit harder than any physical blow. This was her house. She'd paid for it, signed the deed in her name, and moved into the smallest room to give her son and his wife a comfortable life. And now, they were asking her to disappear. Her throat tightened. "So I put up all the money, and in the end I have to leave my own home?" Daniel didn't answer. Silence filled the room, a silence that wasn't uncertain, just cold. Outside, a car engine faded down the street. Inside, the only sound was Eleanor's pounding heartbeat. She set the bags on the table. "All right," she said with surprising calm. "One word. No arguing, no begging." Then she walked to her room, closed the door, and slid down the wall until she sat on the floor shaking. She remembered the day she gave Daniel the keys. His smile. His promise, "Mom, you'll always have a place here." That promise was dust now. Through the thin walls, she heard him on the phone, relaxed, almost cheerful, like a man finally free. It wasn't impulsive. It was planned. She realized then, if they wanted her gone, she'd go. But not empty-handed. That afternoon, her old friend Martha met her at a cafe near the bus terminal. Martha had been by her side since their library days, and when Eleanor told her what happened, Martha's eyes darkened. "He said that to you? In your house?" Eleanor nodded. "I'm not leaving them with anything. I'm selling the house." Fast, quietly. "Before they even know." Martha grinned. "I know just the guy." That night, under the warm glow of a desk lamp in a private office, Eleanor met Mr. Bess Prashan. Johnson, a discreet real estate agent. "You want to sell the entire property?" he asked. "The house is in your name?" "Yes," she replied, steady. "Then it'll be easy. I can close in a week." 1 week. That was all she needed to turn the tables. Back home, the house was quiet. She stared at the furniture she'd chosen, the walls she'd painted, the photos she'd hung, all soon to belong to someone else. She sent Mr. Johnson a confirmation email, "Start tomorrow. Keep everything confidential." As she clicked send, she realized her hands were no longer trembling. Something inside her had shifted. She wasn't the woman who silently endured anymore. She was the woman who planned. The next morning, she rose before the sun, brewed strong coffee, and opened her old leather notebook. It contained pages of dates, expenses, and item lists, every contribution she'd made. Italian sofa, Japanese knives, dishwasher. One by one, she marked what she'd take or sell separately. Each check mark was both a memory and a weapon. At 9 sharp, the phone rang. "Mrs. Grant, I found a young couple who want to pay cash, Mr. Johnson said. "They can come this afternoon." "Perfect," Eleanor replied. She texted Daniel, "I'm having a visitor this afternoon. Don't come home early." He responded instantly. "Okay, do whatever you want. So much for family." At 3,000, the young couple arrived with Mr. Johnson. They walked through the house, admiring its charm. Eleanor guided them like a seasoned realtor. By the time they left, the deposit agreement was signed. She stood in the empty living room that night, gazing at the walls that had witnessed silent dinners, veiled insults, and now her quiet counterstrike. For the first time in months, she felt in control. The following days were a blur of packing. Eleanor labeled boxes, sent valuables to a storage unit Martha helped her rent, and prepared for the handover. She ignored Daniel's curt texts, even when he demanded she babysit his daughter. "No, I'm busy," she replied. 3 small words that shook him. She had always said yes. Not anymore. Thursday morning, she received a grave call from her lawyer, Mr. Davis. "Eleanor, the bank informed me someone tried to use your house as collateral for a loan." "In your name." She gripped the phone. "Who?" "Daniel and Lily." With a forged power of attorney. It hurt, but it didn't surprise her. They weren't just kicking her out, they were trying to strip her financially. "Block it," she said, "now." That night, Daniel came home earlier than usual. He looked at the boxes, uneasy. "Mom, are you leaving?" "Yes." Her voice was clear, cold. He bit his lip, his eyes flickering with something like regret or fear. She didn't care which. Friday arrived like a final drumroll. Eleanor woke early, her heart a mix of excitement and caution. Just as she was about to get dressed, a strange email arrived from a law firm. Request to nullify property sale transaction from Daniel Grant. He was claiming residency rights, a desperate last-minute attempt. She forwarded it to Mr. Johnson, who laughed. "They have no case." At noon, she signed the final documents at Mr. Johnson's office, each signature cutting a string that had bound her for decades. By afternoon, the money would be safely in her new bank account. She drove home with a new suitcase in her trunk, ready to leave for good. But Daniel and Lily were waiting. "Where were you all day?" he asked suspiciously. "Taking care of personal matters," she replied, hanging her coat. Lily sneered. "I hope those matters don't affect this family." Eleanor looked her in the eye and smiled, not kindly. "This family affects itself, Lily." Then she closed her bedroom door behind her. She'd already decided tomorrow she would walk out of that house, and by the time they realized, it would be too late. Saturday morning began with an urgent pounding on the door. Eleanor had just poured herself a cup of black coffee when the banging echoed through the quiet house like a drum of war. She opened the door to find 2 police officers, a man and a woman, holding a search warrant. "Mrs. Foresis." "Eleanor Grant?" the male officer asked. "Yes. We have a search warrant for this residence at the request of Mr. Premini. Daniel Grant. He alleges you're attempting to conceal shared assets without consent." Eleanor remained calm. "This house is entirely mine. Go ahead." "You won't find anything illegal." The officers entered, methodical but respectful. Moments later, Daniel and Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, disheveled but alert, like vultures circling their prey. Lily's hair was a mess, but her eyes gleamed. She was expecting to see Eleanor caught, maybe even handcuffed. "Does Mom really think she can sell the house without consulting us?" Lily spat. Eleanor gave her the kind of look you give to a child caught stealing cookies. "I don't think I can." "I did." Daniel's voice rose. "This is the family home. You can't destroy everything because you're having a tantrum." Eleanor laughed, sharp and cold. "Family? You forged documents behind my back and tried to put this house up for debt." "Don't talk to me about family." The female officer stepped in, professional. "Sir, ma'am, all documentation confirms that the property belongs exclusively to Mrs. Thesician Grant. This warrant authorizes only a search, not confiscation." "There are no grounds for seizure. We're leaving." Lily's face paled. Daniel bit his lip and looked away. As the officers left, Eleanor pulled a thick envelope from her coat, laid it on the dining table, and spoke slowly. "Here's a copy of the signed sales contract. The transaction is closed. The money's already somewhere you'll never touch. You have 4 days to find a new home." Silence. Late, heavy, final. Daniel's eyes widened, panic flashing beneath his anger. Lily turned away, fists clenched so hard her knuckles turned white. The next morning, Eleanor was upstairs packing when she heard a crash. She rushed down to find Daniel and Lily tearing the living room apart. Drawers were pulled out, papers scattered like snow. "What are you doing?" she shouted, her voice booming. Lily's glare could cut glass. "We're finding the sale documents. If we get them, we can nullify this." Eleanor marched forward, planting herself between them and the drawer. "Touch one more thing of mine, and I'll have you both arrested." Daniel grabbed a stack of papers. She slapped them out of his hand. The sheets fluttered through the air: medical certificates, personal notes, receipts. "These are my private files," she snapped. "How low are you willing to go?" "Don't pretend, Mom," Daniel growled. "You've changed. You're not the woman who used to put family first. Now it's all about you." Eleanor let out a bitter laugh. "After decades of working, paying off debts, buying this house, raising your child, and enduring Lily's little comments, if this is the first time I've thought of myself, then it's long overdue." Lily pointed at her, venomous. "We're not leaving. You can't kick us out?" "I'm not kicking you out," Eleanor said, her voice like ice. "The new owner will. And when the police come to support them, don't expect me to step in." Daniel's face flushed red with fury, but he didn't move. He knew she meant it. "I've endured enough," she said steadily. "My silence is no longer your safety net." The room fell into a stunned, resentful quiet. Eleanor gathered the scattered papers and slammed the drawer shut so hard it shook the walls. "If you touch my things again," she said, "there won't be a warning." She left them standing amid the mess, two people who thought they controlled her, now realizing they were powerless. That afternoon, Eleanor went out for air. She sat in a small cafe, finally breathing again. Her phone buzzed. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. "Eleanor, what's going on? There's a moving truck outside." "Lily's giving orders. They're loading furniture." Eleanor's blood boiled. "That's my furniture." She raced home. The truck was almost full. Lily stood in the yard, directing two young men who were hauling her Italian sofa into the back. "Put everything down." "Now!" she roared, her voice slicing through the air. Everyone froze. Lily tried to recover. "Mom, you're back early." "I was just helping you get things out faster. You're busy. This is my property. If you touch one more item, I'm calling the police." She pulled out her phone and started dialing. The movers exchanged uneasy glances and lowered the furniture. Lily muttered curses under her breath as the truck drove off empty. Eleanor stood in the doorway, heart pounding but mind razor sharp. Their desperation was proof she'd cornered them. That night she sent photos and Mrs. Peterson's statement to her lawyer. His reply was short and amused. "Let them keep digging. It'll only help us." The next morning, Mr. Davis called urgently. "Eleanor, Daniel contacted another agency claiming you're mentally unfit and filed forged psychiatric documents to halt the sale." She sat upright, fury tightening her chest. "They're claiming I'm incompetent?" "Yes." "The clinic confirmed the signature is fake. We need to file a rebuttal today." Within an hour, Eleanor had a medical certificate from her longtime doctor, Dr. Taylor, proving she was of sound mind. At Mr. Davis's office, she signed a formal rebuttal and initiated an investigation for medical document forgery. "I want to see this through to the end," she told him. No more forgiveness. When she returned home, Daniel was sitting on the porch, phone in hand. "Mom, this is going too far," he muttered. She stopped, turned, and met his eyes with a clarity that cut through years of maternal softness. "No, Daniel. You went too far the day you decided to betray me. There's no going back now." She walked past him, leaving him staring into the distance, for once without a comeback. That afternoon, Mr. Davis emailed, "Rebuttal accepted. Sale will proceed. Forgery investigation opened." Eleanor leaned back in her chair and allowed herself a real smile. For the first time in weeks, she felt free. The next morning, the doorbell rang again. A woman in a dark suit stood on the porch with a briefcase. "Mrs. Grant? I'm a social worker from Adult Protective Services. We received a report that you may be a victim of financial abuse. I need to ask you some questions." Eleanor recognized the move immediately. Another tactic to delay the sale. Of course, she said, composed. Inside, the social worker asked about her income, bank accounts, and health. Eleanor handed over her medical certificate and sales contract. The woman frowned. That's strange. The report described you as frail and unable to manage your affairs. Eleanor gave a short, bitter laugh. I suppose they forgot to mention that I initiated the sale and signed every document myself. The social worker reviewed the paperwork, then closed her folder. It seems someone's abusing the system to make things difficult. I'll close the case today. If they file false reports again, it will be a legal violation. After she left, Eleanor leaned against the door, exhaling slowly. Another scheme dismantled. Martha arrived that afternoon with a bag of pastries. They have no shame, she said, shaking her head. 2 days left, Eleanor replied softly. Just 2. Together they arranged the last of the boxes. Her suitcase was packed. Documents were stored in a portable safe. As night fell, Eleanor stood in the empty living room. Shadows from the streetlights stretched across bare walls where family photos once hung. Nothing tied her to this place anymore. Just 48 hours, she whispered. And this will all be over. The next morning, Eleanor opened her inbox and froze. Subject line, change in handover date. The buyer wanted to take possession 1 day earlier, that very afternoon. She stared at the email twice to be sure. A slow smile spread across her face. Daniel and Lily would have less than 10 hours before everything was legally and irreversibly gone. She called Mr. Pressib Johnson immediately. I agree. Do it today, she said. Understood, he replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. I'll be there with the final documents at 3 p.m. Keep it quiet. Eleanor hung up, a surge of energy running through her veins. Months of quiet pain were about to end on her terms. By noon, the moving company had arrived. Boxes lined the hall like silent soldiers. Martha hovered nearby, clipboard in hand, helping coordinate the final steps. Eleanor moved swiftly, sealing the last of her belongings, double-checking the portable safe with all legal documents inside. She felt sharper, calmer, like someone who had already crossed the emotional finish line. At exactly 2:00 p.m., a car pulled into the driveway. Lily stepped out smiling, but the second she saw the moving truck, her grin vanished. Daniel followed, frowning deeply. What's going on? Lily demanded. What do you think you're doing, Mom? Eleanor didn't answer. She finished signing a paper with the movers before turning to face them. Daniel stepped forward, panic seeping through his voice. Mom, you said we still had 2 days. The plan changed, Eleanor said evenly. I'm handing over the house this afternoon. Lily's voice cracked. No. You can't. I can, Eleanor said, her eyes glinting, and I already did. Daniel clenched his jaw. You're trying to humiliate us. She smiled faintly. No. This is the consequence of your choices. At 3:00 sharp, Mr. Johnson arrived with the paperwork. In the living room, now stripped of almost everything, Eleanor signed the last documents with Martha and the movers as witnesses. Each signature was a final nail in the coffin of their entitlement. When she lifted the pen, Mr. Johnson nodded. The transaction is complete. The new owner will arrive in an hour to collect the keys. Eleanor slipped the contract into her purse and turned to Daniel and Lily. I'll be gone before they arrive. I suggest you do the same. Neither spoke. Their stunned faces were worth every sleepless night she'd endured. She picked up her suitcase, walked out with Martha beside her, and breathed in the cool autumn air. For the first time in years, it felt light. But fate had one last confrontation in store. As they were loading her suitcase into Martha's car, a black SUV swerved into the driveway. 2 men in suits and a stern-faced woman stepped out. Mrs. Eleanor Grant, the woman announced. I'm the attorney representing Mr. Daniel Grant and Mrs. Lily Grant. We are here to serve you with a temporary restraining order to halt the handover issued by the district court. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. On what grounds? The lawyer flipped through papers. Our clients allege you sold the property below market value to conceal shared assets, harming their rightful inheritance claims. Eleanor let out a low laugh. This house isn't a shared asset. They have no inheritance rights while I'm alive. That order won't last 24 hours. Martha stepped forward. She's just buying time, one of the suited men demanded. Eleanor stopped moving her belongings. She turned on her phone's recorder. Repeat the accusation, she said. The lawyer reluctantly read it word for word. It was all captured. Moments later, Mr. Fide Johnson emerged, phone in hand. Judge's chambers just called me back. That restraining order has been nullified, immediately. The lawyer's face hardened. She stuffed the papers back in her bag and left without another word. Lily, who had been watching from the porch, stormed down the steps. You'll pay for this, Mom, she hissed. Eleanor turned, her voice low and unwavering. No, Lily, you'll pay for confusing my kindness with weakness. Less than an hour later, the buyer's car pulled up. Keys changed hands. Daniel and Lily stood motionless on the porch, like people waking up from a dream they'd built on someone else's generosity. Eleanor climbed into Martha's car. As they drove away, she looked in the rearview mirror one last time at the house, her house, and at the two figures shrinking in the distance, surrounded by nothing that belonged to them anymore. She had reclaimed her dignity piece by piece, and they hadn't seen it coming. 10 minutes later, her phone rang. Unknown number, she answered. Mrs. Grant, this is Detective Miller from the Sheriff's Department. We need you to come in to clarify a complaint. What complaint? She asked. Daniel and Lily allege you stole their personal belongings during the move. Eleanor actually laughed. They're persistent. She stopped by her storage unit first, collected boxes of carefully organized receipts, invoices, and photographs of every item she owned. At the station, Detective Miller laid out the list: a sofa, paintings, a coffee maker, a safe. One by one, Eleanor slid each piece of evidence across the table. Here's the receipt for the sofa, purchased by me in 2018. Here's the painting invoice. The coffee maker? A personal Christmas gift. The safe? Bought with my credit card, all documented. The detective's expression softened into something between respect and disbelief. You came prepared. I knew they'd try everything, she replied. After half an hour, he closed the folder. This complaint is baseless. You may file a counterclaim for false accusation if you wish. I'll think about it, she said with a faint smile. But I don't forget. That night, in her new apartment, Eleanor sat alone under the warm glow of a single lamp. The silence was deep, but not heavy, more like a soft exhale after a long storm. She gazed at the wooden box she'd brought with her. Inside were old photos, Daniel as a laughing child, a Christmas family picture, a faded letter from her late husband. She held them tenderly, not with pain, but with acceptance. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think it's over, Mom? Not yet. It was Lily. Eleanor didn't reply. She simply turned the phone face down. The next morning, sunlight flooded her new kitchen. She brewed black coffee, opened the wooden box one last time, and sealed it in an envelope for storage. Memories belonged in a safe place now, not in a house that had become a battlefield. Martha called. What's on the agenda today? Eleanor smiled softly. Closing old bank accounts. Cutting every last tie. They went to the bank, transferred every cent to her new account, and closed the old one with a signature that felt like slamming a rusted door shut. At Mr. Store Davis's office, she signed legal protections to ensure Daniel and Lily could never access her assets again. You're safe now, Mr. Safe Now, Davis said, and for the first time, she fully believed it. Lunch by the lake with Martha tasted like freedom. The wind was crisp, the sunlight warm, the water glistening. She sat straighter than she had in years. When she returned home, she stood on her balcony, watching children play in the park below. Life went on. And now, so did she, on her own terms. That night, she opened a blank page in her journal and wrote, Day 1 of a new beginning. She smiled. This wasn't just revenge. It was rebirth. She had taken back her life, her dignity, and her peace, and left betrayal standing at the door empty-handed. And if you ever find yourself standing where Eleanor once stood, unappreciated, betrayed, dismissed, remember, sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It's signing your name on a new future while the people who underestimated you watch everything slip away. If this story moved you, hit follow and share it, because no one should ever mistake